Dan and Amy, so in advance of today's testimony before Senate Intelligence Committee, Jim Comey released a statement, his opening statement yesterday. But while that was being bandied about on cable news channels, you did have relevant testimony from two other individuals who it has been suggested Trump tried to influence with respect to the Russian collusion investigation, with respect to inquiry into General Flynn, just in general. This has been some reports, the anonymously sourced reports that we've all got so accustomed to. So DNI Coates and NSA Director Rogers were before the Senate, and here's what they said about anybody approaching them to engage in wrongdoing or pressure them in any particular direction. First, Admiral Rogers.
In the 3+ years that I have been the director of the National Security Agency, to the best of my recollection, I have never been directed to do anything I believe to be illegal, immoral, unethical, or inappropriate. And to the best of my recollection, during that same period of service, I do not recall ever feeling pressured to do so.
That's pretty categorical.
Yeah. Did the exact opposite of what CNN said that they're going to say.
Imagine that. And DNI Coates?
In my time of service, which is in interacting with the President of the United States or anybody in his administration, I have never been pressured. I have never felt pressure to intervene or interfere in any way and shaping intelligence in a political way or in relationship to an ongoing investigation.
All I'd say, Director.
Also pretty categorical, although that is not a shared opinion. A previous DNI director, clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off, James Clapper, he spoke to the Australian Press Club.
Oh, yeah.
And had this to say about the investigation, which he previously testified before Congress. He said he saw no evidence of Russian collusion. Now, again, he wasn't privy to a lot of it. He was out by January, but he saw no evidence. Here's what he said about what's ongoing in the Trump administration.
His subsequent actions, sharing a sense of intelligence with the Russians and compromising its source, reflect either ignorance or disrespect, and either is very problematic. Similarly, the whole episode with the firing of Jim Comey, a distinguished public servant, apart from the egregious, inexcusable manner in which it was conducted, I have to say, though, that I think, compare the two, that Watergate pales really, in my view, as compared to what we're confronting now.
Watergate pales by comparison to what we're confronting now. I mean, I guess I would like him to extend his remarks to be specific about how it does pale in comparison Watergate does. But
does he know something we don't know?
Well, apparently he said before Congress that he doesn't. I mean, he's testified that he does not know something we don't know. It's a rather remarkable statement, and it means that maybe Jim Comey's not the only one with a penchant for playing politics in the intelligence community and law enforcement community. But here's the other thing I think is going on, too. And I've created a corollary to Godwin's Law. So Godwin's Law is the longer an online discussion goes on, the more likely, or the probability of a reference to Hitler approaches 1. Well, the longer a politically driven criminal investigation goes on, without evidence, the probability of a comparison to Watergate tends to 1. And what you have here, what we're waiting for at some point, somewhere, especially if you're going to make characterizations like Clapper did, is a statute under which you're investigating alleged wrongdoing, evidence of alleged wrongdoing, and also the context of the Constitution, a president's authority, and a distinction between purely political discussions, the issue of political propriety, and the issue of criminality and legality. Different things. For more on this, as well as a bit of a review on Trump's nominee to replace Jim Comey, Christopher Wray, we're pleased to be joined by Jeff Danik, who is a retired FBI supervisory special agent. Mr. Danik, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to be here, Dan.
And so why don't we start with Christopher Wray and your assessment of that selection with a lot of supposition about which way Trump would go, if he would go with somebody that's more politically aligned with him or somebody that would be well received in the legal and law enforcement communities. And it seems, based on what I know, which is not a lot about Christopher Wray, that he went with the latter, somebody that's well respected in law enforcement and legal circles.
Well, I think a lot of us were, I would say, immensely relieved that it wasn't one of the FBI insiders.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, it's a very good nomination in a lot of people's eyes.
And elaborate on that. Why were you relieved it wasn't an FBI insider?
Well, a lot of people in the FBI, quite frankly, feel that the top of the FBI needs to be cleaned out, the executive ranks. So, Dan, that's the main problem there now.
And with that attitude include Jim Comey, who has been cleaned out?
Well, he was an impediment to cleaning out the top ranks. So a lot of agents that I talked to, saw him as kind of a savior coming in. But then when he didn't do anything about kind of this corrupted promotion system we have in the organization, and a lot of the executives that don't show great leadership, very much leadership at all, really, the agents started really, not having a lot of faith in him.
Can you describe that in a little bit more detail? This corrupted promotion system that you're referencing, and that agents that you speak with are referencing.
Sure. Well, the fundamental you got to understand is agents join the FBI to be great detectives. So that's most people join the FBI. They want to be like a master detective, like the world's best investigator in the world's best investigative agency. So that's why we join. And solving crimes, thwarting terrorism, chasing spies, that's why most people join. As soon as you step out of that, even to a first-level line position, supervisory position, the job dramatically changes. You're not allowed to handle informants anymore. The job becomes administrative. And your ability to lead and affect programs increases, but really the administrative portion of your job is onerous. And many of the best agents will not even take that first step up in the management. Consequently, the worst agents the worst investigators go up into management, and it becomes, after the first line, then it goes downhill from there as you go up in the FBI. It's just rife with people who are incompetent investigators, basically, at the top ranks, and that needs to be cleaned out. I think Chris Wray will become frustrated very quickly if he's confirmed, because he's a complex litigator. The man has spent 12 years building a practice, hundreds of millions of dollars through his law firm, and high stakes criminal cases that he will become quickly frustrated at the top levels of the FBI. They're just lack of knowledge of these things. Now, at the line level, of course, the agents making those cases, they have extreme knowledge about them, and they can get the job done. But Chris Wray's background with King and Spalding, though, I think needs to be looked at in the confirmation process. I think this is going to be an issue for him, and I hope it's looked at closely. I don't know if you guys have done any research at all on on the law firm and who they represent and that type of thing, but I think that's going to be an issue in the confirmation process.
Mm-hmm. So in just a few hours, former FBI Director James Comey is going to be testifying. I'm sure you read his 7-page prepared testimony, and what did you make of it?
Amy, I make of that as backside covering. You think about it. You're meeting with your boss, and you sneak off and write these one-sided memos Memos never really reflect completely what was said by both parties. I've seen so many CYA memos in my time at the Bureau, that's almost 30 years. I would always point out that, you know what, these memos, the one thing they all have in common is pretty simple. Never once does it say anything bad about the writer. The writer never has any, kind of self-exploratory, cathartic moment of relief where, you know what, I shouldn't have said that to the president. But anyway, they're very self-serving. I want to see the actual detailed memos. The notes he says he kept, those are definitely 100% U.S. government records. Those belong to the citizen. He doesn't get to say who sees those, and he's a private citizen, and to dole those out. If that's true, a lot of us in the private sector now are going to go back and change the way we approach our clients.
Yeah, it's very much like a campaign ad or a politician's story on the campaign trail, right? Every anecdote, somehow they always turn out to be the hero. Yeah.
Well, do you think Comey should manage a PR firm after this because he's trying to persuade the public that he's a good guy before the hearing even begins?
No, I think that James Comey, the last thing he's going to have any competence at is PR.
Yeah,
PR is in the toilet right now.
Well, and a lot. There's been people who have said, Wall Street Journal's opined on it. My sense is it's fairly accurate. Other reporters who talk to people that know Comey and so forth have said similar things. We talked to Tim Carney, the Washington Examiner, on this topic yesterday, and it seems to be a guy who is not just worried about his reputation, obsessed with reputation management as a first order of business, above and beyond all else. Jim Comey wanting to portray himself somehow as, Elliot Ness.
Yeah, it might be a little strong based on what I know and my experience with him.
Okay.
What I have some agents down here in South Florida. We get together quite often. They knew Comey back in the line level prosecution days up in New York, and they describe these are great agents. These are some hero agents, and so I give them a lot of deference. They said back in those days, it was really a hero's row there in the U.S. Attorney's Office of line level prosecutors. The Louis Freehs, Pat Fitzgerald, James Comey. So these are people that you could walk in, very approachable, never said no, as long as you were doing something that was, wheelhouse legal stuff. Mm-hmm. And they were really, really assets to the U.S. government and the taxpayers. So he came into the FBI, and almost immediately we started getting all-employee emails from James Comey that were, I can't really describe them as anything other than bizarre. I would.
Can you give us an example?
He would give these kind of folksy, kind of grandfatherly emails about, I was sitting around the Thanksgiving table with my family, and he had this word on that particular email. None of us had ever heard. I think he made it up. He said it's a word that his family makes up. And okay, I get it. Connect with your family. And
was it Kofifi, by any chance?
It was on that level, and I took to getting so many emails from him. These are long emails. We're busy. Line level supervisors and agents are pretty busy out there. There's 10,000 things going on. There's people calling that someone's taking pictures at the airport. There's a drone flying near the federal building. The marshals are calling. It's busy. We don't have time to read 2-page folksy memos from James Comey.
It's this Thanksgiving dinner.
I had to put Jim Comey in my spam filter. Hey, stop emailing me. I mean, it
was. I would email my buddies and the FBI. They're probably listening to this, I'm sure. But if you run my internal email, you'll see I sent it to people. I'm like, this guy is bizarre. What? I don't get these emails.
Well, but, it's interesting though, because Andy McCarthy, who's a former federal prosecutor and a friend of Jim Comey, writes for National Review, and he a big fan of Comey, has a lot of respect for him. But it's interesting as he moved through the ranks, as you were describing, and up to director of the FBI, and over his tenure there, there's just, you can't find virtually anybody who, even if they defend him as a person or as a professional, will defend his performance as FBI director. And ultimately, that's what matters as it pertains to being FBI director.
Dan, 100%. The memo that came out of the Attorney General about him, James Comey usurped the Constitution. He usurped power. He does not, we in the FBI do not have the ability to officially decline on criminal prosecutions. Just because Loretta Lynch was conflicted does not mean that that the power falls to the FBI. It goes to the Deputy Attorney General. It goes to Rosenstein. It goes to whoever over at the AG. They're the next man up, the next woman up, not us. So that was, and it's an echo chamber. It goes back to my original point. At the top of the FBI, when James Comey sits down with his inner circle at the FBI office, at the FBI building on the 7th floor, and says, "This is what I'm going to do, folks," and it's an echo chamber. Nobody stands up and says, "Hey, hold on, put the horse back in the barn. You're making a declination. You're not a prosecutor. You don't have that authority." No one probably said that to him. And that's time and time and time again with him.
He is Jeff Danik, retired FBI supervisory special agent. Jeff, thanks for joining us. Really enlightening discussion. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro romantic answer line.